pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, one thing I am getting good at is displaying the flag. You put it up really close to the camera. So welcome to our January 11th, 2022 Tiverton School Committee meeting. I ask for motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Dr. Larkin, I would like to pull correspondence letter A for discussion.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Take a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish?
So we're approving the consent agenda without A?
The motion's to remove the,
Oh, to remove it. Okay, yes. Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
She's on mute.
Lanier, I think you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so item A is removed. The motion on the floor now is to approve the consent agenda. I still need a second.
Second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Pavo,
I'm going to abstain.
okay. Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
I vote yes, so the consent agenda is approved. And Diane, entertain discussion regarding the correspondence from the Smithfield School Committee.
Thank you. In your package tonight, there is a copy of a resolution passed by the Smithfield School Committee advocating for a change in Rhode Island General Law 16740, basically looking for an extension of time for the additional 5% on school housing aid related to construction. The town council pulled this from their agenda last night as well, and they will be considering it as a possible resolution of their own in support of this. And what I would like to do is propose that we, and I know we can't do it tonight, but that we also consider adding our support and perhaps even using this as an opportunity to collaborate with the town council and have a joint resolution.
Okay, I'll open the floor to other discussion. Mr. Dakotas?
No, thank you.
I assume no, meaning you don't have any other comments or you're raising an objection?
No, I have no comments. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mrs. Pavo?
I have no comments, but I agree with
Mrs.
Diane.
Powell? Okay.
No objection.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I would recommend we put this on for our next
I agree.
agenda.
And what I
And
can do is reach out to Councilman Burke, who was taking the lead on this, to see if he would have any appetite for doing it jointly.
okay. Sounds good. Since we removed it by vote, I don't think we need to do anything further than that. We'll just put it on for the next agenda. So next is item number 4, student representatives report. I see Mr. Farley is here. Is Ms. Baker present yet?
She is sick and just recovering from that, so she won't be here tonight. So it's just me.
All right. Well, I'm sure you can do the job of a man and a woman. Anything to
Of
report,
course.
Mr. Farley?
Nothing of immediate concern. I have heard some student complaints about worries about COVID numbers. That's really all that has come into immediate complaints through students. Yes.
Okay. Well, feel free to offer out things other than complaints, but I share their concerns as well. I don't know if anybody else on the committee or Dr. Sanquioni or Ms. Craven, you have any thoughts about that you want to offer at this point. I'll open the floor to anyone who can just chime in as they choose, or any of the other administrators.
I'll offer some commentary, Dr. Larkin. I have also received, I'm sure Ms. Craven has too, some emails from some of our students about the COVID and concerns about it. And, you see this in my weekly update and so forth, that although you see it community-wise, state-wise, across the country, what we know is that our schools are still the safest environment for anyone to be in. There's our transmission was 0 last year. It's 3% this year. Although COVID comes into our schools with people, it's either staff or students, it's not being spread from student to student or staff to student and so forth. So, I keep reiterating that to anyone who wants to look at the data with me or listen, that you're safe in school. All our mitigation strategies, whether it's wearing the mask, the 3 feet of separation, the plexiglass, the filters in every room, I can go on and on, everything we do, what we're doing is preventing the spread in our schools. You're safe.
Okay, so if I'm understanding that correctly, there have been no transmissions in the actual school.
I didn't say no. Last year there was no, and I wish I could keep that record. This year, out of all the cases, and I don't have the number in front of me, 3% can be attributed to being spread in school. So 97% of our cases are not spread here, but there was a small amount, which again suggests to us what we're doing makes our environment extremely safe.
And this is just something that, either you can share later or maybe it's just not possible to get, but are there comparisons to nearby schools as to those numbers, or?
There is, I don't have that data in front of me, but certainly could obtain that and then share that out.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
I know last year that of all of the cases, and this was before Delta, before Omicron, and I think the numbers are, too raw to really make firm conclusions about right now for this school year. But for last school year, the school year 2021, of all the cases in school-aged students, that's not redundant, only 5% were attributable to in-school transmission. And as Dr. Sanquioni alluded to, in Tiverton, the number was 0, which, you don't usually get to a 0 in public health. Right now, inevitably, with the more transmissibility of Omicron, I think it's likely that there are some transmissions even in our school district. Again, I guess putting on in, my other hat, the issue is, schools are safe because of a few different reasons, but certainly one of them is the ongoing diligence of our school nurses and our school teachers who maintain the things that keep students safe. So social distancing, masking, and of course, every child that is vaccinated is one more child who is not likely to either get infected, or if they are infected, less likely to transmit it to somebody else, and less likely to have severe illness. So for anybody still listening after my kind of rant, the only way through this pandemic is vaccination. All the monoclonal antibodies in the world, all the antivirals in the world, frankly, all the masks and social distancing in the world, there's a limit to both of those things and the other two I mentioned. The only way through this is vaccination. So these vaccinations have been proven time and time again to be safe. So there really should be no hesitancy. We've given this vaccine, and I'll stop my rant shortly, but we know more about these vaccines than we've known literally about any other vaccine in the history of vaccines before, widespread use at this point. Hundreds of millions of doses have been given. There is no serious signal in children. And that number is orders of magnitude greater than, say, when polio vaccine was introduced, when measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine was introduced, when more recently rotavirus and hepatitis B and other now commonly used vaccines were introduced. So thanks, Sam, for the opening. All right, so we
I
are.
just have a general point of order, Dr. Larkin.
Sure.
That all of that great information notwithstanding, and it was great information, I think that this agenda item, I'm real excited to see it, but I think it's too general. I think for agendas, we need to be a little bit more specific about, not even a little, we need to be very specific about what we're going to be discussing. So if we could have our student reps in the future, just let us know by the time we post what items they would, just general items they would like to discuss. I think that'll be more in line with open meetings laws, because you can't just have a general item. If you want to discuss it with Ben, that's fine, but I think that it's too general. I think, people have a right to know what we're discussing, even if it comes from our reps. And I, as a citizen, would not have known that this was going to be discussed tonight. So I just think we need a little bit more meat with the report. Just like, so tell us a couple days in advance what you would, what the comments and discussion are going to be. I think that's in compliance with open meetings.
Yes, of course we can do that. Thank you.
I knew you'd catch me, Deb. But yeah, actually it's, we could probably have a long but not very interesting discussion about that. So I agree with you there.
I have no issue. If you want to bring it up to the attorney, it's just my reading of open meetings laws is that your agenda items need to be very specific, and just general items are not permissible.
Yep.
If he comes back and tells me I'm wrong, gladly accept it. Won't be the first time.
Tempting as that may be, I don't think I'll discuss with the attorney, but if anybody else is free to. All right, so we are up to item 5, new business, 5A, FY23 budget presentation. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you see at your agenda, we're going to take a little deeper dive into the general presentation we gave you 2 weeks ago when we outlined the budget numbers that the Tiverton Public Schools needs for a level service budget. You may recall that for level service, we need basically 35 million. And we know that there's a 4% cap, but wanted to make sure the committee understood all the numbers behind that. Along with that general presentation, we want to be specific with you now and break it into 3 categories: transportation, special education, and technology. 3 categories that basically have mandated services attached to them in parts of our budget that we really don't get to modify very much. So we'll go in the order that they're listed on the agenda. So we'll start with a look at our transportation budget for next year, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Roderick.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. Dave, if you could just move it to the second slide, please. Thank you. So I've provided for you today, which I have in the past couple of years, a similar slide showing prior year actuals, the immediate prior year budget, and then our request for the year at hand. And so first, I want to explain that the increase in the written into the transportation contract is based on CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and inflation, and then there's a formula that gets plugged in. Initially, when I did this budget back in early December, I had estimated an increase of 5%. Now that the end of the year has occurred, it's looking more like 6%. And therefore the transportation contract would go up by 6%. That is not including the statewide transportation, over which we have no control. I don't know if you recall from our last meeting, statewide transportation is the literally the state-run system for our out-of-district placement students. And it is a shared cost system. And our estimate for next year is running about $600,000. So that accounts for that huge jump from this year to next. However, I can tell you that for this year in FY22, our actuals will be well over the 150,000 and probably closer to the 600,000. So that jump there is a little deceptive. And then I sort of moved some of the budget. We have some excess monies, or the past couple of years, we've had some unspent monies in the bus monitors, and I have moved some of those dollars up to the last line for athletics, extracurricular, late buses, and so forth, because in prior years, the last 2 years, we have either eliminated the late buses altogether, had limited late buses, and definitely had limited athletic transportation. And so we are hoping to reinstate that in full for FY23. In terms of the regular transportation, I know if you look at the slide, it says it's a 12.2% increase. That, to be honest, is sort of the buffer for the difference in the CPI that I'm anticipating. Again, I had initially calculated 5%, but it's looking more like 6 and 6.5%. So with that, I will keep it brief, but happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor to the committee for now. Mrs. Palish?
No questions, Sherry.
Mrs. Pava?
I have no questions.
Mr. Dakotas?
Hi, Amy. The only question I have is regarding the FY23 out-of-district placements.
Mhm.
Is there anything the state is looking at to give us an answer? Because we're getting less money overall, and these costs are going up and up. I mean, if you look at the costs associated with it, I mean, I don't know if it's sustainable. Are we able, or do we have a beat on this, or is this something we can even talk to maybe our state reps and state senators about?
So to answer your first question, there is no specific word from the state level regarding this particular program of the statewide transportation. In terms of that, I know Ms. Krager and I had a meeting with the representatives of statewide, and the end result was we are in a boat similar to many in that we are harboring some of the cost of some of the other districts because they have a joint program and a shared program where they have students from different districts riding the same bus to the same places, and without getting into all the particulars of that. In terms of how that relates to the state aid, I believe right now, at least my understanding, is that it's apples and oranges. They are not increasing or decreasing our state aid in relation to the out-of-district transportation estimates. I cannot say for sure, but my guess is that they're not even speaking to one another, or the ideas are not being blended together in terms of that. But you are correct. It is difficult to sustain going forward.
Okay. Well, maybe there's some noise we need to make as a district, and maybe have some of our other districts in our similar situation start making some noise to ride and to the State House, because it's not fair. We have to do this, right? It's not a choice, but
Correct.
at some point when most school districts like ourselves are already up and we're in the red, right? We're just growing our deficit, and we
Correct.
have to get help. Yeah, someone's got to hear us on this. So I'll do. We can maybe put this off to the next one, but I'll think about it some more. But thank you. I appreciate it.
I can tell you, we are looking at alternatives. I know Ms. Krager and I are looking at potentially bringing it in-house. Again, we run the issue of finding suitable vans and staff and aides to assist. And we are still working on that, but I don't have anything in concrete as yet. So for now, we are presuming to be utilizing statewide, but that can change. we just don't have all of the elements in place yet.
Okay, well, appreciate everything you're doing to look into it between yourself and Sarah. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. So I guess I have sort of similar concerns to Mike, and I just don't understand how we can go from $1.4 million literally 3 years ago to 2.2, and this gigantic jump in the statewide transportation. And where was this buried in FY19? I don't quite, because those numbers, the other line items haven't changed. Well, they changed dramatically from year to year, but
Can you throw up that spreadsheet again? While Jerry's talking. Thanks, Jerry.
yeah. So that, all of the other line items, they have changed, but the biggest one was the statewide transportation, which was essentially zero in FY19. I just don't know where those costs were.
So that was in, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was part of the, I'm not sure if the regional assessment or the out of district placement costs. It was reported on a different line item, which was, I believe, 55630. So it was included with that. And then I'm not exactly sure why the transition happened, but back in FY21, we had to absorb all of the transportation related to that. So the out of district, the out of district expense has gone down some. I'm sorry, I take that back. It's not the out of district. It is the regional assessment has gone down some, and it has now come onto a separate line here.
So that was embedded in our budget in 2019 and previous to that. So it was still part of your budget, but we have each of the districts now have that in their singular budget because it wasn't a shared service. Each district pays for their own child for that transportation. So it made sense just to make sure that that was on each of the individual districts and not on the regional shared service because it wasn't a shared service.
Okay, so then Amy, there must be $600,000 decrease in another line item in the larger budget.
So under the regional assessment, that has come down almost $500,000 since 2019.
So the $600,000 I see as an estimate for FY29 as statewide transportation out of district placements, ESSA. So it really hasn't gone up by 300%. It's just been moved to this new line.
Correct.
Okay. Then I guess the question is, why was it $560,000 in FY21, 150 in FY22, or that's just our budgeted number?
That's just our budget. Our actual number will be above the 600,000. When we did the budget at this time last year, we had not received any statewide transportation invoices. And we got those, I believe, sometime in March. And it was only at that point did we realize how much more it would actually be in FY22, but there was no way to change the budget at that point. So we're going to have an overage in that line for this fiscal year.
Okay, which we're halfway through, but only a quarter, maybe a little bit more way through the school year right now.
Yeah, we are.
You know what our
We
budget
just
to actual
received the
is?
December invoices.
Do you have any sense of what our budget to actual there is?
We're probably close to $300,000 at this point versus the 150. I know as of October, in the last budget presentation I made, there was about $253,000 in statewide transportation, but that was through October, if I recall correctly. And so we've had 2 months of invoices since then.
Okay, so let's just say that's a third of the year so far. So we're going to come in at something like 450 for FY22.
We are going to come in, I think, closer to the 600,000 if I
or
remember
better.
correctly.
Okay.
So we'll be over budget by 450.
We over by 450.
So then again, I guess just by moving these numbers around, if we were 1.483 in FY29 and you're estimating 2.2, 600,000 of that is from moving the transportation costs out of a aggregate special education line item to this line item.
Correct.
And so I should not be as alarmed by these numbers as I am.
Correct.
Just asking. Okay.
With that said, I think like Ms. Roderick said, that she and I are working together to try and come up with an alternative option that is, gets our students to these placements safely and securely, but with not as variable of costs. It changes month to month, so it's hard for us to even make good predictions of what it would be. And things like as simple as they may be using a full-size bus for half the month, and then they change it to a smaller van for the other half of the month. And we are not made aware of those changes, but it will significantly change whatever bill we get. So it is just something that we've been continuing to work on and look for alternatives. Other districts are looking at alternatives as well because they are in the same situation that we're in.
Okay. And then I guess my other question is the bus assistant monitors. That seems to be kind of a little bit out of whack too, compared year on year from FY21 to 22 to 23.
So when we renegotiated the transportation contract, the contract language had language stating that we would be responsible for a 4-hour minimum per bus monitor. And based on the rates that they gave us, that would come up to roughly the 525 that you see under the budget for FY22. So again, at the time I prepared the budget, that's what I put in. However, the actuals are actually coming in closer between, just under $300,000. So,
and that's why your number for FY23 is a little bit lower.
Well, it's lower, but also I took some of that, I'll call it extra, if you want to call it that, and I moved it back up to the line for the late buses in athletics so that we could fully fund that. So since it was already in the budget, I didn't reduce it significantly. I just moved it to another line.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Any questions from our administrators?
I don't think, Diane, did you go?
No, I've been waiting, nice and patient.
Oh, sorry. I thought I'd gone through everybody.
No,
Mrs. Farnworth,
thank you.
did I steal all your questions?
How many students is this $600,000 serving?
10.
Oh, 60,000 a student? For bus?
If you average it, but it's not quite that. There are some more intensive students and some less intensive students.
Should we just buy limos? It just seems that's unbelievably high. Is there?
Yeah. I mean, why not take that part of the transportation in district?
That's something that we've looked at.
That's what we're looking to do. Up until this point, we've been looking, Ms. Krager and I have been looking all fall for different types of vehicles that we could bring in-house, and they're just not available. Ones that are safe anyway. I know Ms. Krager researched a few, and we had Mike Mendez go over and look at them, and they were just basically buckets of rust for premium dollars that were not safe for the children.
Yeah, unfortunately, now is not a good time to be looking for vehicles.
We look every month for vans, and then we also have to coordinate posting for positions, not only for drivers, but some of these students need aides with them. And how would we accommodate that? And, you know, if one aide is here, or, you know, do we have subs for aides or drivers who are sick? It's a whole programmatic shift that we need to plan out and be able to implement, but we don't even have the staffing or the vehicles to do that right at this minute.
We're going to have to come back and discuss this again. I'm going to ask you all to sharpen the pencils a little bit on these estimates, because I just think they're crazy high. The other question,
in all due respect, Mrs. Farnworth, we don't.
This is a preliminary discussion tonight, but honestly,
I beg your pardon?
This is a preliminary discussion tonight, but honestly, I'm very concerned about these numbers. And the second question I have, with the regular runs, did you say you had shifted? Because you mentioned the CPI increase was in the six and a half.
6.5. Yep. As it's turned out, when I initially did the budget, it was 5.
Okay, so you have a 12% increase on the regular runs. Did you shift something in there for an increased number of runs, or I kind of missed that part?
No, so actually, I just took our, how can I explain it? So there is 5% increase in some of the other lines. I put in, if you would call it, a buffer, because I was expecting CPI to be greater than 5%, and I just put it in that line. So I really think it's going to be 6 or 6.5% increase.
And which line is that, Amy?
I put it in the regular elementary to and from transportation. So that's the buffer to account for the difference in CPI.
Okay. Sorry, Diane.
No, not at all. And on the athletics and extracurriculars, is there any way we could get a breakdown of how many trips for middle school, high school athletics, et cetera, what the breakdown is and the average cost per trip?
I can do that. Yep.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Amy, I think you'd wanted to answer one of Diane's questions before.
Well, Mrs. Farnworth, you had asked about, you wanted us to sharpen the pencil. If we are somehow unable to bring the statewide transportation in-house, we don't have a choice. We don't have any ability to negotiate that number.
No, I understand, but I mean, our average cost per student all in for their education is just under 20,000. And we're paying 60,000 just to transport a small number of students. I'm just really having a hard time accepting that.
As are we, but we,
It's part of the statute.
other than being able to opt into or out of the system, we have zero input into the calculation.
And perhaps going back to Mike Dakotas's comment that, this really is something that, needs, I know you guys are trying to address it here, but this whole transportation issue, including this, needs to be addressed somehow, because it's just simply unsustainable.
Yeah, if I may, it's a legislative, not problem, but it is the statute that requires that we provide these services, which is proper. However, it needs a legislative statewide solution as well to adequately fund and provide for the services themselves, which is, kind of a generalization about special education services oftentimes. So.
Just one more comment before we move on, Dr. Larkin.
Yep.
I just wanted to point out again, something that you so, eloquently pointed out, that these UCOA accounts, things are shifting all of the time with them. where things get reported, where they get, where RIDE may want them the next year, where we may have put them the prior year. So I do caution people when they're looking at the detail. It's great to have, but there are times when things, do shift, and you just need to be aware of it. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to not show the numbers, but things do shift over time with where they get reported.
And this truly is just an effort for us to understand. But, just to point out something else, in the account that I think, Amy, you said it came from 55630. That account has actually increased quite a bit in the last 3 years. So I don't know. If we had the transportation in there, and we've already increased over $1 million.
I'm not sure if it's 55630, 55640.
Okay, that could be.
I know that the first year I was here, the regional assessment was roughly 1.9 million. It is now down around 1.4 million.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
So that's the shift in the out of district transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, because the other services in that line item have gone up as well. So it wouldn't be a clear $600,000 savings. It would be sort of meeting somewhere in the middle.
And I think Prager may have something to speak to that in her presentation. So,
okay. All right, I am going to open the floor to any of our administrators who would like to speak up or ask a question.
I'm all set, Dr. Larkin. Thank you.
Yeah, as usual, showing their wisdom and remaining muted. Our student representative.
No questions that weren't already asked, no.
And any questions from the public, Mr. Carnevale?
There are no questions from the public at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. All right. Well, Amy, you made it through that. Who's up next?
Special education is up next, Dr. Larkin. And again, as you've looked at our budget overall presentation, after the 60%, almost 70% for personnel and benefits, the next largest portion of our budget is special education. So to give you a good insight into that, Ms. Krager.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. I know Amy survived that. Let's see if I can do the same thing. My first several slides just give a brief overview of special education. I always put this in the presentations because there is so much involved in just this area of education. So I'll go through it a little bit more quickly this time because I think most of you have, or all of you have heard this already. But really our guiding principles of the budget is the law, the free appropriate public education for students with disabilities, and least restrictive environment for students ages 3 to 22. And again, I think I said this last year, it was just a couple of years ago where we service students 3 to 21, and then the law shifted to include students who require services still until 22 years old. Of course, we support all of the district programming that's happening and the district's strategic goals. And then we just want to ensure that we have a continuum of services for students, not just a one size fits all. And that is what their individual education plan would carry out. So what are our known factors when we look over the budget? We know our personnel contract commitments, similar to what I'm sure Ms. Roderick went over with you earlier. We know our district figures, our enrollment of regular ed students and special education students. We have certain state and federal mandates that we have to ensure are included. There is some revenue from tuition and admin claiming that will you'll see in the next previous slides. And then our identified population of special education students is 17% of Tiverton's population. So when we talk about special ed school-based services, it is not just the middle section of this slide where we have special ed teachers or speech and language pathologists or psychologists and social workers just carrying out the services that are outlined in students' IEPs, but it also starts with the pre-service stage, and that's evaluations, consultation and evaluations. So you can see all the different evaluations that are included there. I should have added to that risk assessments. We're seeing and doing a lot of risk or threat assessments as students' mental health needs and social emotional needs are increasing during this time of uncertainty. So, and then in addition to the evaluations and services for students, there are specialty transition services for students who have IEPs that are ages 14 to 22. 14, 15, they just start those transition services when they get into the high school. This becomes much more part of their schedule and their time during the day is spent on that. Here's the continuum of supports we talked about. Each of these areas have sort of the least restrictive and most restrictive in each one of those. But our services can just start as consultation services with regular classroom teachers or with parents. And then we have related services such as speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. And then we get more into the specialized instruction with a special education teacher. So a student will be showing some sort of skill deficit in the areas of reading, writing, and math if it was a student with a learning disability. And the majority, 80% or more of our specialized instruction is happening in the regular education classroom. So special ed teachers or speech paths or even school psychologists and social workers are working alongside the regular ed classroom teacher and providing that specialized instruction. When that is not enough for a student or we're not seeing adequate progress, we do provide specialized instruction outside of the regular classroom for students, either in a one-on-one or small group setting. And that can literally be for like a quick 15-minute fluency, specialized instruction, reading fluency, or that can have where a student is outside the regular classroom for the majority of the day if their IEP outlines that. So we really make sure we go through all of those services in the classroom, in the regular classroom, in the regular school. Our teachers are aware of what is needed before we look out of district placement. Our principals are super creative, along with my assistant director and myself, to really try and make sure we provide whatever we can for our students in the classroom setting. But there are times when the least restrictive environment for a student is in an out of district placement. And I do have a slide on that towards the end of that. So that is usually where our services are out of district placement, is kind of our most restrictive. There are some times when students cannot leave their house because of a medical issue or a mental health concern, and we do have to provide homebound services for those students, so, or hospitalized. So that's kind of the most restrictive. When we look at our special education enrollment, and I have the last 3 years here, we're really staying pretty stagnant with the numbers around 300 each year. You won't even see too much variability in each of the categories there. That's the students with developmental disabilities. Those are for that disability category, actually cover students up to age 9. So we are seeing students come into our special education world at 3 years old. And many of those students are identified as students with a developmental disability. So we are seeing deficits in not just sort of academic or early academic skills, but in addition to that, we're seeing deficits in physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language, hearing. So there's just sort of a global developmental delay. So we're doing a lot with those students at that early age. And then all of the other ones are staying pretty steady, as you can see there. Oops. So I talked when Ms. Roderick was going over her slide as regards to transportations. Our budget includes every special education service that can be shared among the 3 towns. So here are all of those regional shared services. And you can see there's a lot of them as far as personnel, purchase services that take place in the schools, equipment and materials are shared between the 3 districts. And then, of course, our regional specialized classrooms during the school year and then extended school year programming. Here is the updated list of our regional specialized programs. We had the Therapeutic Learning Center team come last year to this meeting and report out on their program. We did not include any new programs this year. You know, again, coming into this year with COVID, we really wanted just to stick with the programs that we have here rather than introducing anything new this year. But you can see how it starts early in preschool setting. Those are some of those students with developmental disabilities and getting more intensive each year. The Pathways to Success program, if you were just to look at your presentation last year, we used to call that behavior support program, but we really wanted to change the theme and make it more positive. And we are changing some of the strategies to make it more positive and truly believe that is a Pathways to Success. And then you see the Project Search program and our transition program for students 18 to 22. So some of the tuition that's part of the budget comes from admin claiming from Medicaid, and we predict that being around $32,000. Our preschool tuition revenue is just about 26. That is down a little bit from our last year's tuition. Again, if you were to look at last year's, but we don't have a lot of families sending kids like we did during COVID. Families are choosing to keep their little ones home right now rather than send them to school. Our Project Search tuition, that's our transition program that we run in collaboration with Newport Hospital. We do have districts from around the state who send students to that program. So that's an additional stream of revenue. And then Tiverton's total revenue is $96,582. So this is the big pie that we look at when we look at our regional budget. But this is where we start. It gets broken down in the next few slides. So when we look at that, our biggest part of our budget is salary and benefits. I'm sure just like Ms. Roderick showed you, but Tiverton Public Schools, biggest part of their budget. And that is salaries from all 3 towns for that. And then we look at the contracted and purchase services, and then salaries, and then supplies, services and miscellaneous. So let me just break that down. So the Tiverton share, you saw that total there was 12 million. The Tiverton share is 41.3% of the total budget. And that comes from a formula of total enrollment of regular ed students and total enrollment of special education students. So Middletown and Little Compton have the rest of that budget. So then we reduce that by that anticipated revenue I just showed you on the previous slide. And then we reduce that again by the local payroll. Although that was part of the big picture pie that I showed you, we do take that off because that your Tiverton Public Schools pays the teachers that are working in the Tiverton Public Schools. So the total share for Tiverton is $1,420,000. So when we look at that, just the 5-year historical, if you say, well, like, what was it last year? What was it the year before? You have an idea there. And that, hold on 1 second. That regional payment, that is the total minus all of the local salary and benefits. So this, part of this going down here is a direct correlation to, for example, that new program at Tiverton Middle School that we put in place last year. Because we had 8 students who were in out of district, then we were paying for that out of district cost, and now they're back with us. So then the payment to the region for Tiverton, is just one part of the special education budget, the total Tiverton budget. In Ms. Roderick's presentation, she'll have the special education teachers and teacher assistants in the budget. She includes the transportation, as we just went over, as well as the out-of-district placement tuition, in addition to the payment to the region. So I did include, again, too, the sort of historic out-of-district data. Again, the number of students are staying pretty status quo. You can see a little bit of the fluctuation of the dollars. Please know that the number of students does not totally equate to the number, to the amount of dollars, because each student has different needs. We might have a student who in an out-of-district placement who requires a one-to-one support, or in addition to one-to-one support, they might need nursing services. So there's different levels of needs for each of those students. And finally, I just wanted to end the presentation with some of our students doing a project-based learning activity, which aligns with Tiverton Public Schools programming and plans for project-based learning activity. They go out and garden, and they do a lot of math and reading and writing and science around that project. And that is it.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Ms. Farnworth?
Sarah, can you go back a couple of slides to the assessment where you had the comparison?
This one here. Can you still see it? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. Thank you. So the reduction, we started in 5 years ago at 41% of the total. We're down to 29.5, and you are, the reason for that is that program we have going on at TMS?
That is one of the reasons for that, yeah. So, it's the teachers and the teacher assistants that we have there. In addition to that program, we did also institute one of our, the regional transition program as well. So it is a correlation of bringing these programs into our schools and trying to service the students in our schools.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions beyond that for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Pavo?
Sarah, thank you for doing such a wonderful job as you usually do, as you always do. I just have one question. What is specialized kindergarten?
So that's a number of students. We could call it intensive kindergarten or specialized. The students in that classroom have very specialized programming. They're in that classroom the majority of the day, really working on daily living skills,
Okay.
early daily living skills.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Mr. Pakotis?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, and Mrs. Palish?
So Amy, if I'm looking for the special assessment, is it mainly in 55,640 in the UCOA data? And I know then you reallocated, but is that where it ends up?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess going back to this annual assessment, while Sarah, while this went down, what you're saying is we implemented a program in-house and we are now paying staff at considerable savings, because I remember going through this, but it's not like we flipped from out of district, which can be very expensive, to we are paying staff in district. And I know we did an analysis maybe last year where there's considerable savings to doing that.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yep. I didn't include that in this presentation because we did do that last year, but yeah, it really, really when there's 5 or 6 students that have similar presentations in an out of district placement, I try to bring that in-house because we can service them, hopefully in school, and then with the teachers and support staff we need, it usually comes out to less expensive than the out of district.
Correct. So I guess I just, if, for anybody watching the presentation, it didn't really go down 500,000. It's that we shifted cost to another line item, but those costs that we shifted were in the long run, in the long term, going to allow the district to see significant savings.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. So I just have one question, and it's about the 5-year historical out of district data. That slide where we had 38 students in the 16-17 school year and 40 students, so really just 2 more, and it's kind of circulated around that number, that mean. But the costs actually, per student went up significantly more than that, by about 600,000 or so. Do I have that right? 500,000.
Yeah. Yeah, so go ahead.
You're the expert, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, so each year too, the tuitions increase about 2%. So that's included in there too. And like I said, when I was presenting the slide, I do put the number of students in there because it is a piece of data to use, but those students, they just have different needs. So we could have 46 students, but have less needs than the 38. It just really depends on the student that's at the out of district placement at that time. And some of them do require, like I said, they go to the out of district placement, but they even still need a one-to-one service provider. And then that might come out, they may do well, and then they don't require that one-on-one, and then the tuition decreases as the year goes on. So there's just some variability in the amount of service those students get.
Yeah, so I guess I just set myself up for a comment by your answer, and which is that our budget is made so far ahead of the time that we actually sometimes incur these costs that you can both see significant savings, which we did from about 2013 to about 2017, 18, because, you know, we had anticipated some costs that weren't there. But then beginning in 2019, our costs began to outstrip what we had actually budgeted for. And so this, you know, is a nice illustration of why budgeting some of these costs can be, you know, a real nightmare in terms of, or a dream come true, you know, a dream come true if suddenly your costs are dropping and you're realizing some savings by, again, bringing more programs in-house. But then all of a sudden you've got out of district placements, you know, proper, appropriate, what we should be doing. And even if we didn't want to, would be mandated by statute, can really create significant structural deficits in our budget. So thank you again for that. I'm going to open anything from our student representative.
No questions or comments at this time.
Okay. And anything from the public, Mr. Carnavale?
There are no current questions from the public, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. And any questions from any of our administrators?
Dr. Larkin, I still have a question.
Oh, okay.
Are you not seeing me?
Did I take the floor away from you?
No, not at all. I have a follow-up question.
Okay. Follow away.
Thank you. Sarah, question. My mind is still on the out-of-district transportation, out-of-state transportation. Is that reflected in any of these historical figures that you presented? I was kind of
No,
hoping.
the transportation is not.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Diane?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
You're
And
welcome. Thank you.
any questions from any of our administrators? Okay, well, again, thank you, Sarah. You made it through just as well as Amy.
Thank you.
Great job. All right.
Even better.
I wasn't gonna, no, everybody does a good job. All right. Next is, I believe, technology, Dr. Sanquioni. You're muted.
Yes, you are correct. Big part of our budget allows us to sustain distance learning when we need it and allows our technology to advance learning in the classroom. There's a lot of components to this. So our technology director, Dave Carnavale, has got this budget for you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the time for us to dive a little deeper into the technology budget. So we're going to go over to our first slide here, and we're going to look at technology-related hardware. So the total budget amount, which has been pretty much level funded for the past couple of years, is at that about $123,783. Of that was $119,712, which was for our 3-year lease payments on the one-to-one Chromebook initiative. I wanted to point out that this is now ended, and that brings back that 119 so that we can take care of supplying new devices for our incoming 5th grade students and our rising high school students, so that going from 8th to 9th grade. So instead of us now leasing, now we'll be purchasing them outright for those 2 grade levels. And the rest of the funding in that category, we're looking to use that funds to replace the aging registers in our cafeterias. Those have been up there for quite some time, and it's about time that we start changing those out and getting them onto the proper technology that they would be needing. The next area we want to look at is some of our software overviews. So we have virtual high school, which are for students that are looking to get extra credit in courses that may not be offered, and we budget that at about $20,000. We have some web-based supplemental instruction programs, and that's at $88,399, and some of those are also funded through IDEA grants as well. So there are times where this category could go down a little bit, but there is some room in there for us to work with that. We have other technical softwares, and that's at about $100,000. And we have our web-based assessment testing, and that's at about $8,000. Web-based software is at $21,297. And technology software is at $64,451. And as Ms. Palish had said earlier, the UCOA codes get kind of funky where RIDE wants some items to show up in some places. And that's why you're seeing so many different line items for just for software and where they want us to place everything. So as you see on this page alone, there are 6 different categories that we are using just UCOA codes for, and it's all web-based type instruction or technology software related. The next slide that we're going to be looking at is leases, dues, memberships, and subscriptions. Now, we have printer leases, and that is at the 42,811, and this is the last year we have for lease payments on our copiers. So that line item there, when we go into our next budget, so when we're here a year from now, we'll be talking about something different in that area where it will open up a little bit for us. Our internet access is at budget at $20,344, and this is E-ratable. So E-rate is a program that's run by the federal government that allows us to supplement some of the cost of our internet, which would allow us to move funding around if we do gain anything extra there. Now, the next 4 lines you'll see here is all under the same category, the 57,311. And we like to break this down a little bit just to show you. So we have the Microsoft and Google licenses. So the Microsoft would be your Office license. The Google is the access to slides, sheets, forms, docs, classroom, the ability to do Google Meets for classrooms when we go into virtual or anything. That's at about that $25,282. We have our virus protection, our classroom monitor and content filter programs that we use, and that's at about $16,371. Our accounting HR systems is about $12,402. And our school website and family communication system is at $18,200. And we are in the midst of updating that. And once we complete the update, so once we hit year 2 of the update, this category goes from $18,200 down to $11,002. So there'll be a savings in 2 years for us in that category of about $7,000. So I did want to point that out in this presentation here. And just to kind of close it up, and I know this slide might be a little difficult to read here. So we did talk about the lease payment for our Chromebooks is up, and that old payment is going to cover the incoming 5th and 9th grade. Our outbound 8th grade, the senior devices are cleaned up and distributed to our elementary schools. This allows us for a little bit of better sustainability in regards to devices that may become out of date or no longer supported, so that we're able to put some of the really nice devices into our elementary classrooms so that they could use those as well. 2024 and beyond, we use the lease amounts from 22 to continue replacing the old devices. And the benefit, like, again, we're getting new devices into every student's hand every 4 years. So they're not stuck when they start 5th grade that in 12th grade, they're still using the same device. So this allows us to kind of cycle through everything. We take the older devices and send them down to the elementary school level because they're not using them as much as the grades 5 through 12 are. And we do have to retire unsupported equipment, which Chromebooks do become unsupported after a specific amount of time, whether it's 6 or 8 years, where they can no longer do the state assessments and stuff like that. And when we do retire that equipment, we do it to an e-waste program, which is the cost of the district, as long as no one wants it in a donation or anything like that. So that was the quick breakdown of the different technology areas. If anybody wants to ask any further questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Ms. Palish?
I was trying to tie out some of the numbers in your presentation to the budget book.
Mhm.
And for instance, 57,311, can you just, yeah, I just want you to go back to that quick. So you just broke out some of the costs, not all the costs.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So the, let me find it.
Yeah, those were the more important ones that I wanted to touch upon there,
Yep.
Deb. Thank you.
Yep, that's fine. So the web-based supplemental instruction programs, that whole line item is going up by $60,799. So what is that primarily, Dave?
So this here would be any kind of software that's used. For example, we use a couple programs. One of them is called Co-Writer, and another one is called Snap and Read. These
So
programs.
are we adding new things, or did the cost just go up by, because it's like a 47% increase?
Yeah, a lot of the costs have gone up, and some of the line items have been moved around.
Right.
We find that we budgeted, say, under the 57311, and then we realized, oh nope, it needs to be moved to the 53222.
Okay, so it might have been someplace else in FY22 is what you're saying, to the point.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, it's crazy on how often they move these around on us.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Pavo?
Have nothing, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Farnworth?
Thank you. David, could you back up one, please?
Absolutely.
Hopefully it's just one. I want to talk about the, yeah, that one there, the hardware. So you're saying that the 120 for the third year lease payment was for fiscal 22?
That is correct, yes.
And for fiscal, so that you now have $120,000 available in fiscal 23 to buy Chromebooks?
That is correct. That is to buy the, yes, that's to buy the incoming 5th and the 9th graders.
So about how many students would that be?
We usually average around 300 to 325.
Well, I don't know. The high school classes are
Total.
definitely in the 120 area. Middle school, I don't know, maybe, I know it's more. Let's say 160. All right, yeah, 280. And about how much are these Chromebooks?
They range anywhere from 290 to 330, depending on what time of year it is and what the vendor wants to charge us at that time.
Okay, so I mean, just round numbers, 300. So
300 times 100 is 90,000.
yeah, how much, Jerry?
90,000, I think, right?
Yeah, so we got a little bit of extra there as well. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, you know, to the point of that Mrs. Palash made, I think if you're presenting these things at a line item level, perhaps in the beginning, telling us right out that these aren't going to match the actual budget totals, that the budget totals are actually going to be different in almost every case. But that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Actually, while we're on this slide, I just have a question. I think I'm just confused by. So when you say our 3-year lease payments for the one-to-one Chromebook initiative, so were those payments for the hardware that were structured over 3 years? I think of a lease as, you know, you have to give it back now.
It was, so we did a lease to purchase. So we now own the devices.
Okay, all right. So that makes, now I get it. Got it.
Yes.
Okay, and you said the lifetime of these devices is somewhere between 5 and maybe 8 years.
6 to 8 years is the typical. For
8
these.
years.
Yes.
Which would sort of make sense if you're buying a class worth of devices. Hopefully, it sees them through their middle and high school years. I would guess, Diane, as well, that there's probably some replacement costs with devices that expire before their allotted time. So maybe that's one of the reasons to continue having that in there. Okay, Mr. Dakotas?
Yes, Dave, if you said this and I missed it, I'll apologize, but I'm wondering how long or how old the registers are in the cafeteria.
I didn't say how old they were. I'm kind of embarrassed on how old they are. But they've been around, I would say, about 11 years.
Okay. So those are not aging. Those are way, way outdated.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried to repair one to keep everything the same, and we were unable to do so.
Right. Figured as much. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was my question.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So they're not as old as the dishwasher anyway.
No, they're not, thankfully.
How much does a cash register cost?
So with the cash register, there's a couple of different things that we have to take into account for. And if you look at the picture there, it has to be a touch screen. It just makes it easier for the cafeteria crew to run through the students, where the program that they use is very similar to what you would see in a restaurant, where the large buttons show up on the screen, they touch the screen, everything like that. We are trying out a method where we're using devices that are out of one of our computer labs that we update. So the computer itself may be like 3 or 4 years old or 5 years old. And so the technology in there is still good, especially to run a register program. So what we're looking to purchase would be the touch screen part of it to hook up to the device. And touch screens, they usually run anywhere from $250 to $450, depending on the strength that we go with, and whether or not it's going to be something that'll sit up and have the computer attached to it, or if it's going to rest on top of the machine. There's other ways to do it. Some districts use Microsoft Surface tablets, but I don't think we want to go that far, where I believe what we have for hardware, as long as we purchase touchscreens, would get us through. And that's what we're trying out right now at the middle school. We do have one in there.
And so what's the cost? Maybe I missed it when you're.
So if we're using existing, we dismantle a computer lab, for example, and we have a couple extra devices, we would just be purchasing the touchscreen, which can run anywhere from like around that $220 up to about $400 and change.
Okay, got it. Okay, I was thinking about having making the students add up their cost themselves, and if they were wrong, or make the change. If they were wrong, they get it doubled. If they were right, they get it for free. All right. Any questions, Mr. Farley?
Yes, actually. So I was just wondering, is there a fund for broken Chromebooks, like insurance? I know there's some, or I would imagine there's some contingency for that.
So thanks for the question, Sam. So at the beginning of every school year, families are allowed to purchase a insurance program for the device itself at $20 a year. And that would cover the device if it was lost, stolen, damaged, anything like that. We would go through an insurance company to replace that device out, to either fix it or to replace the whole entire device completely. We do have spare devices, loaner devices that we can allow students to use as well. So we do have cache of those in the technology office as well for the students to use. And that's typically, Dr. Larkin had made a point that we do keep some money in the budget so that we can purchase devices if we need to, due to damage beyond repair.
And are those, is that cache of spare Chromebooks, are they being replenished with, like, as the senior class graduates, there's a certain amount going to there and then the rest is going to the elementary school, or?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we do is we assess the device once it comes in. We clean them all, and some devices are distributed out to the elementary, where we do keep a certain percentage in the libraries as well as in the tech office.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from any of our administrators? And any questions from the public, Dave?
We do have a question from someone in the public. Dustin, you can unmute your mic if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi there. I wanted to change gears from the hardware question. I just had a quick question on your previous slides regarding the line items that were budgeted for. There was all kinds of software. I don't remember them, but one of the ones that stood out to me was other technical software. I guess I just kind of expected other to be kind of a small category, but it was just north of $100,000. So is there a list where we can, or I can get to a list that would say what those other technical software items were?
That is something that we can provide. We'll put it up on the website and we'll put it under the technology side. But that currently isn't listed up there, but that is something that we can provide for you.
Okay, I appreciate it. And then I'm sorry, I just had one more. You were talking about the touch screens for the registers. If you're talking about a point of sale system like as in restaurants, does that come with like annual fees or licensing fees and stuff as well besides the
that? Yeah, so that is something we use a program called NutriKids, and that is something that we do purchase yearly, and that is part of our other technical softwares that line item that you saw there. So we've always been doing that as well.
So that's already included.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Okay. Anything else from the public?
That is it, Dr. Larkin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And all three of our presenters did swimmingly well. All right. I think we are up to.
Can I ask a follow-up question of Dr. Sanquioni?
Of course.
We received our books over the break. At what point, Dr. Sanquioni, are we going to go through? I know we just did these three, but at what point, it says budget presentation. At what point are we going to sort of go through the whole book? Is that going to be like a special workshop or something that?
Well, I know the school committee had contemplated a special workshop, and that was initially the plan, but if not, we could certainly go through that with you at the next meeting on the 25th.
Okay, so we can talk about that at the end then when we schedule meetings. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Deb. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to move to item 5C, accept Up With Arts grant for $1,000 for middle school ceramics. Dr. Sanquioni.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in your packet, you saw that there was a grant submitted by one of our art teachers at the middle school, Mr. Stephen Schreiner. He asked Upward Grants for $1,000 to support the middle school ceramics program. I ask you to accept this grant with gratitude.
I'll ask for a motion to accept the grant.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. That's a very popular program from what I understand.
Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So yes, again, thank you very much,
Doc-
Mr. Steiner.
Dr. Larkin, I think we skipped 5B.
We pulled that off the agenda, Ms. Pavo.
Okay, so I missed that. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so we are up to 5D, award bid for fuel oil. Ms. Roderick.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. So this is, I think, fairly short and sweet. I provided to you all the details in your packet, the invitation to bid and the response that was awarded pending approval of the school committee. So I am recommending that you approve the 1-year contract to Casey's Oil in response to that invitation to bid.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor for discussion. Mr. Dakotas.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mrs.
Find the
Pavo?
detail. Give me a second.
Yep.
Okay, I found it. Go ahead.
Mrs. Pavo,
I have no questions.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Amy, I was listening into the town council meeting last night. Can you give us a little bit of a historical on how this came to be and where we are, how we got to this dollar amount? Because I think it's a very good amount, good rate. Now, I really would like the committee to fully understand that. I think we've got a really good deal here.
Okay, I literally put out I initially, in November sometime, had asked for quotes. And Mr. Cotter, the town administrator, said that we needed to go out to bid. So I issued the invitation to bid. And that is the response we got. There was, I don't know what else you're looking for other than that was the quote that was provided.
Sorry. How long is this contract for? It's just for 1 year?
For 1 year through September of 2022.
Okay, so will this be the process moving forward, or be an annual bid process just like
Yes.
this?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or potentially an extension of this bid if it calls for it.
Okay, okay. And clearly the school department is by far the largest consumer of this product.
That's
of
correct.
Parties involved. Okay.
Correct.
That was my only questions. Thank you.
So I think it's just to follow up on what Diane was saying. This is something we enter into jointly with Little Compton Schools and town and the town of Tiverton.
Correct.
School department. So
That's correct. We went out to bid. The school department went out to bid on behalf of all of those parties.
okay, thanks. Mrs. Palish?
So I'm just looking at, so it's 262, 242.
$2.42 per gallon.
So I see a 35% increase in that line item 56,209. So is that a combination of you are anticipating increased usage and an increased price, or is that all just price driven?
It's all price driven. I believe, let me just double check the math. Initially, when I had put the budget together and presented the books to the committee, the bids weren't in yet, and I had used the original quote, which was higher.
Oh, okay. I know these books are about a month old at this point.
Right. And so but depending on usage, if we have a colder winter, we could also use more. If and prices in the gas and fuel oil market are very volatile. I know in the last month or so they've been rather stable, but they could also jump again. The savings we're benefiting from this bid process could just as easily have been an increase.
Okay. That was just my question, is tying into the light item. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mr. Farley, any questions?
No, none at all.
And any questions from our administrators? And any questions from the public? So the
No
motion-
questions, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Next is item 5E, award bid for high school dishwasher and middle school steamer. Mrs. Roderick or Ms. Roderick.
Thank you again, Dr. Larkin. So again, these items were on the capital list that Dr. Sanquioni and the town council had worked out in terms of funding from the town, I believe from the casino money. And the dishwasher and the steamer have been broken for a very long time. So we immediately went out to bid for this. And the results were that the Kittredge company came in with the best and most responsive bid. When I say that, their bids included installation and including all the necessary utility and permit work that needs to be done to install the new equipment up to code. So I'm asking the school committee to approve that award.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve the purchase of the dishwasher and steamer from Kittredge Company.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
And so I'm going to open it up to any discussion. Ms. Palish?
Amy, I'm just looking quick. What's the total roughly for the two?
Oh,
50
it's
plus?
58, it's roughly 58, say 60,000 for the dishwasher.
And do you anticipate, is this coming out of savings from somewhere else, or is this fund balance? Sorry if you already said
No,
that.
this is from the capital funding from the town, that the use of the casino money.
So this, yeah, so Deb, this was part of,
Okay. Yep.
this, so this was, a very, I think, collaborative effort on the part of the administration and the town council and school committee. And so this is.
This was on the initial list?
This was what was approved by the town council.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
We're actually under the appropriation, if I'm correct, but maybe I'm not. So anyway, any other, Deb, you have the floor technically, or actually.
No, I'm all set. I was just trying to get the money in my head and where it came from. Thank you.
So Mrs. Palish, to answer your question, it's roughly 60,000 for the dishwasher, all told, all utilities, and roughly 40,000. I'm rounding up.
Perfect. Okay.
On those numbers for the steamer. And again, that includes installation, utilities, plumbing, electrical, everything to bring them up to code.
Well, when we were in person, the gentleman that came to our meetings, I'm sure will be happy to see that we
He will be very happy. Yes,
he will.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I haven't seen Mr. Cork in a while. Yes. And Amy, do you remember off the top of your head, if because I just don't have it in front of me, if this was within the appropriation or a little bit over or under?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, Dr. Larkin, I don't recall specifically, but I believe the dishwasher was a little bit over and the steamer was a little bit under, if I remember correctly.
Okay, all right. So I did Mike?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
We're not voting. I'm just.
Oh, okay. I thought we had question. I do have one question.
Yeah.
So I did add it up, Amy. It's totally just under 103,000. I don't know if that matters in the grand scheme, but we have a grand total of 2 million to spend in our appropriation or allocation, whatever the correct word is. As part of your ongoing financial reporting, could you please keep us abreast of how much has been spent and how much is remaining of that fund?
Absolutely.
Well, that allocation is also structured, so we would have to.
Right, it's structured by item.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want the school committee to be making promises to pay over if bids come in higher.
Well, so then did you want to continue this until we found out what the
significantly higher than what it was?
I don't know, maybe while we're discussing.
I think I see Denise has her hand up.
Yeah, so I'm going to recognize Denise DiMederos. Go ahead, Denise.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. If you give me a minute, I can find the appropriation. Okay. I just have to run and get it. Would that be all right with you?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
So maybe we can, we'll keep going and come back to it?
Well, we're still under discussion. So
that's true.
Diane, any other questions about this?
No, but I do think it's important that we understand what the source of the funds for the purchase will be.
Yep. It's, I'm pretty sure not more than $10,000 off one way or the other, but I just cannot remember. Mike, you thought you were about any questions, Mike, or comments?
No.
Okay.
No again, Mike.
Mrs. Pavo, if I had the time, I could probably be digging through my email looking for this, but I'm trying to.
I thought the dishwasher was more than 60 originally.
Yeah.
When we first started discussing about the
70 is the number I had in my head.
The number I have in my head is like 73,000,
Yeah.
which is probably way too high. I'm trying to find my paperwork.
But yeah, that is part of why I asked my questions. I just wanted to be sure where I knew where the funding was coming from.
I'll have it in 1 second, guys.
All right.
One,
So any questions from our administrators? If we could come up with a question, that would help us kind of vamp while we're trying to figure this out.
Well, let's just move on to the next thing and we'll come back.
All right. Any questions from the public?
I do have another question for Amy, though.
Yep.
Amy, did you advertise this in the newspapers, the bid for both these items?
We did, yes.
Okay, because that Diane's initial question about the oil contract was the problem at the beginning, because it wasn't advertised appropriately. So I just wanted to make sure that all these items are being advertised appropriately.
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And any other questions from the public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. Denise, were you able to come up with a number, or Amy?
Still looking.
Yeah, me too.
Just give me, I should have it.
If I'm permitted to ask, I did have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
Please.
I have it.
Do we have a timeline on if you were to approve the contract as to when the dishwasher would be installed?
The lead time is 12 to 16 weeks.
Okay.
For getting the equipment, and as soon as it's in, the contractor will install it, but supply chain issues are delaying many things.
Understood. Thank you.
Amy, I just happen to have it on my screen for the steamer. I guess it is, the lead time is saying 16 to 24 weeks.
Correct.
Well, we've waited half a century, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Gary, I have the number.
Okay, what was it?
The dishwasher was 55,000
Okay,
and the steamer was 60,000.
so 115.
so we're still under.
Yeah.
Under. Okay,
So what did the dishwasher cost?
Well, yeah, what are they by?
Right, because this is itemized.
Yeah, it is. Agreed, Denise. What,
Yeah.
so what was the dishwasher?
The dishwasher was roughly, if I remember correctly, 58,000 and change.
Do we
Yeah.
have it in here?
It is in there. And the steamer
58,769.
was 40.
Okay, so let's find the dishwasher first and then I'll make a motion. Okay. I am gonna make a motion that we approve. Let's just do it separately. If you have no objection, Mr. Larkin.
that's
Well,
fine.
we've already made a motion, so don't we have to?
I will withdraw that motion.
Okay, now that was Mrs. Farnworth.
I'll withdraw my second.
I was the second, so I'll withdraw my second.
I'm sorry.
You were the motion maker, Diane.
Do you want to
Thank you.
withdraw that motion, Diane?
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay,
So I am gonna make a motion to approve the dishwasher for 58,769.45 with 55,000 to come from the council restricted capital fund and the remainder to come from our fund balance.
is there a second? Okay, I'll second it for purposes of discussion. I'm going to recognize Ms. DiMenderis.
Deb.
Yep.
We gave 55,000, but we did say that if it costs more, you could come back and say, for instance, the dishwasher cost 60,000, and I'm not sure, 58,000, but the steamer came in 20,000 less. Is it
Mhm.
okay with the town council?
Oh, so
That
I
we-
guess we could do
Right,
that.
so, but we did say that over and over again. These are
Yeah,
estimated
So we
costs.
could delay it and put it on your next agenda and then bring this back to us. We just would have to, I mean, it would just delay it another
Well,
month, I
so
guess.
Deb, we can structure the motion to approve it pending, approval by the town council to adjust the amounts.
I can't speak for the town council, but I will say we said
Right.
over and over again that
Yep.
these allocations are estimates. And if there was a change in the estimates, we would be very eager to hear it and change it if we need to.
Okay, so I'm going to amend my motion.
But just
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No,
but-
thank you.
So
Thank you for the clarification.
Deb, I seconded your motion, so withdraw your motion.
I'll
and
withdraw
make a Motion. All right.
I'll withdraw it, and now Dr. Larkin, you make the motion.
I'm gonna
I'm not
make a
having
mo-
much luck.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the purchase of the steamer and the dishwasher for the amounts, and that we ask the town council to adjust the stipulated amounts and their requisition to match the purchase amounts in the bid.
And that we will not accept the bids until that discussion has been had with the council.
That our approval is contingent on their approval.
Yes.
Yeah,
our
I think
approval is
you-
contingent on their acceptance of the adjustments. There you go.
Okay, so that's my motion. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, could I ask you to repeat the motion, please?
Ooh, I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the bid for the steamer and dishwasher for the amounts specified, and that we return to the town council and ask them to adjust the appropriated amounts to match the amounts in the bid.
Okay, thank you.
And then our approval is contingent upon
That approval.
that approval.
Which
So,
would be on my agenda in 2 weeks.
so may I suggest that the verbiage in that motion, I don't want to say be amended, but due to the substantial lead times in
Mhm.
acquiring this, could we approve it? I know you said contingent upon the
Yeah, I'm gonna make the motion that it is not contingent upon the town council adjusting, but that we ask them to adjust. And that we come back and revisit the issue if we need to reallocate some funding in order to even things out. The town council, I think, was absolutely clear that they were in partner with us and wanted to make all of this smooth. So I do not see an issue here.
Agree, but once it's purchased, it's purchased.
Yeah.
So
That is correct. That is correct. But I think we're talking about,
$3,000.
that's why I was gonna make the motions that, it just,
Yeah.
if they don't reallocate that, we just take it out of fund balance because the difference is small.
yeah, I think we want to, yes, we've waited half a century, but why are we going to wait another 2 weeks if we don't have to? So,
And I don't, and Denise is right. I don't see an issue, but she's right. We got to go before them.
yeah, which we can do. That's not a problem. And I think we can make the whole thing whole, if you will, if there's some hiccup there. But I don't anticipate one. So that's my motion. Anybody second it?
I'll second it.
Thanks. Any further I'll go through the, any for discussion? Mike, any discussion, questions?
No.
Mrs. Palish?
So I'm just clarifying, your motion is just to purchase it?
Yep.
Okay,
And go back to the town council and ask them to adjust the allocation.
correct, but not contingent on that. We're just purchasing.
We're just purchasing. You good, Deb? Any other questions?
No,
Mrs. Farnworth,
I'm ready to vote.
Mrs. Bavo.
I'm ready to vote.
All right, any questions from the public? Mr. DiMederos.
I think the town council made it very, very clear that this was just estimated numbers.
Yeah.
And as long as the $2 million it doesn't go over the $2 million, we'd be more than willing to make that adjustment. So I think it's very safe, in my opinion, to purchase it. I think it's just going to be a no-brainer for us to say, okay, this is what it costs.
Yeah, okay, I think we're
I
still
just
on.
thought that might help. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the public
There are no other questions, Dr. Locken. Thank you.
or from our administrators? I'm sure you don't want to get into this. All right. That's a fun discussion.
The swift arm of government.
Yeah. And Mr. Farley, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Bavo,
Yes,
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
After much contemplation, yes.
and I vote yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Denise, and thank you, Amy. All right. Next. So we used to talk about curtains all the time. Now we talk about the dishwasher all the time. When are we going to get married? All right. Next is the item 5F, request to delete policy 1163. Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've reviewed policy 1163. It's the distribution of keys. This is a detrimental policy to the safety and security of all our schools. I've reviewed this with the policy subcommittee and recommend that you delete this policy immediately tonight.
Okay, is there a motion?
I will make the motion that we, following Dr. Sanquioni's recommendation, delete policy 1163, distribution of keys.
Okay, is there a
I'll second
second?
it.
Okay, I'll open the floor to discussion. Mrs. Bavo?
I have just a question. Is there going to be another policy that addresses this, or are we not going to distribute keys to anyone anymore? I'd like to know what's going to happen as far as distribution or no distribution of keys. We're going to do away with the policy, but what are we doing about keys?
Sure, we'll have it outlined in the safety plan where it's confidential information only for those who need to know it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dakotas?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Ms. Palish?
All set, thank
Ms. Barnworth?
I made the motion.
I know, but this is for your discussion or questions or,
No, sir, I have no questions.
okay. Peter, do you want to just gloss on what you think is a problem with this policy? Just
So
sort of.
it talks about, without getting into great detail again, because I feel it impacts the safety and security of our school system, it talks about the issuing of master keys. And it's rather restrictive of administering these keys, and let's leave it there. It has to be more open than what this policy is. And again, we'll put the exact information in that safety security manual that will go to the school committee and to the administrative team only, so we can protect the information where it should be.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from our administrators or from the public?
No questions from the public, Dr. Locken.
Or Mr. Farley?
I just had a question. So a master key to like locker locks or to doors, I don't know if I'm just out of the loop here or if you can't answer that, which I understand.
Specifically to doors, we're discussing that here.
Okay, that negates my question then.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay, thank you. Next is item 5, 5G. Vote preliminary budget number due to the budget committee by January 15th, 2022. Today is the 11th, again by charter, just to kind of gloss this a little bit for those maybe new to this fascinating discussion. So we have to vote a preliminary number to the budget committee that they will then continue to work with over the next several weeks. And then a final vote or a final budget number is due to them typically by sometime in late March. We probably need to actually specify those dates for the eventual town financial town referendum in May. So I think that actually before making a motion, we maybe need to have some further discussion. I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you've outlined the deadline that the school committee faces, that there's a preliminary number due by the 15th. Today's the 11th. I know we've done a preliminary budget overview for you 2 weeks ago. You got a little more detail today. In your packet, I outlined a letter giving some information that could be used as a template to be sent to the town council, to the budget committee, if you felt that was appropriate, or certainly it's open to more discussion. Some of the key numbers are a 4% appropriation, or an appropriation that meets the needs of the school system, or what we're calling a level service budget. So it's really the committee's pleasure here.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to discussion. Deb?
So I know we've had this discussion every year, so I'll just bring it up again. By law, we can, this board can only ask for 4% over last year of the municipal piece plus the estimated state aid. So this, we cannot ask for 34,059, 859 per state law. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go, the superintendent can't go argue to get more, but our legal requirement is restricted to 4% of the municipal plus the estimated state aid. And that is not 35,052, 859.
Okay. Mrs. Pavo?
Have no questions at this time.
And Mr. Dakotas?
No, thank you.
And Mrs. Farnworth?
Thank you. I agree with what Mrs. Palash was just explaining. We are by law limited to the 4% cap. And I think that Dr. Sanquioni, your letter needs to reflect that. I also have a side question. You're indicating that there is an anticipated drop in state aid. That's not published on RIDE's website. What was the source of that?
We received a document through RIDE from, I believe, the legislature. So what their initial vote was, or what their initial projections was, I don't know how official it was, but this was distributed to all superintendents in Rhode Island. I know Ms. Roderick received it through all the business managers. So, it's the only number we have to work with right now.
Okay. But it's, again, RIDE hasn't published that preliminary estimate. So I'm wondering if we can even consider any of it official until they have.
Well, the number wouldn't come from RIDE, though. It would come from the legislator.
Well, so that,
Right, but we usually, for the budget, for this first pass, we use what RIDE publishes on their funding website, and they haven't published anything yet.
Yeah. So-
And I'm not understanding the legislative process. They just went back into session this week.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think that certainly, even more so than Tiverton, the state's budget process is pretty volatile. And that's only more true over the last 2 fiscal years. So, I think we are best served by saying that we will, hold the assumptions about state aid steady, because I really don't know that they're going up or down. And to suggest otherwise is to, a bit of a fool's errand that we're reading the tea leaves of what the legislature is going to do.
And it certainly could go up and it certainly could go down. I'm just,
Yeah,
if we're using past precedent as how we set this number, we've
Yep.
taken what's been published on RIDE's website, and to Diane's point, nothing's been published. So to me, our number should be the 32,506, 856 plus the one, or actually, no, it's
Yeah.
in our books. It's 33,531, 278.
yeah. So it's the 32,506, 856 plus the 1,024,422. So I am now going to make a motion that we vote for our budget, for our preliminary number to the budget committee of $33,531,278. And that reflects a 4% increase from the local levy, flat funding from state aid, and based on the 32,506, 856 from FY 22. I'll ask for a second.
A second.
So I'm going to open up to any further discussion. Mrs. Pavo?
Could you please repeat that number again, Jerry?
Yep, 33,531,278.
Thank you. I have no questions.
Mr. Dakotas?
No, thank you.
Amy has her hand.
Okay, I'm just going to go through the committee first. Mrs. Palish,
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Farnworth.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Mrs. Roderick.
Thank you. I did want to point out that the state did issue preliminary numbers, although it's under the funding formula calculation section of the website. That's where I got the figures that have been presented. I can forward the link to all of you if you'd like.
Yeah, I think the concern, Amy, is we just don't want to ask for a number that's lower than we need to. Based on, we usually, like I said, we usually wait until they publish it on that funding website, because otherwise we're not requesting 33,531. We're requesting $700,000 less than that. And I prefer not to do that if, again, precedent has been when it is published on that site, that's where we pull it from. I don't know how others feel.
Okay.
And
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Ms. Palish's point, regardless of what state aid is, up or down, it doesn't impact the 4% that you're going to ask for. So your number's solid. That number, if it has to be reduced, it's the impact of state aid, but not the 4%. So.
No, but if the state aid goes down, then the total number goes down.
Right, the total number, but not your request.
Yes, but we're requesting a total number. We get one
Right.
budget allocation from the budget committee.
right. Again, this is a preliminary number as well.
Right.
As the legislature moves through its process, we may have more insight and adjust that number as we think is most appropriate.
And Peter, you'll need to, I'm sorry, let's vote, and then I guess we can talk about the memo.
I'm just going to open it up to any questions from our administrators. And any questions from the public?
No questions from the public, Dr. Lockett.
And any questions from Mr. Farley?
Yeah, just one. And I understand if you don't know yet, but assuming the worst in that,
Worst.
or assuming that we only get the 4% increase and there's no, petition budget submitted, do we know how much that would affect the students, like positions caught? Or
Dr. Sanquioni, you want to take that
I
one?
would say that's too early to make any determination there because of the factors of where state aid would be high or low, and then the school committee's decision. And if you want to use fund balance or ESSER funds, I mean, there's so many parts here in January. I don't think we could predict that. But let's hope for the best for sure.
yeah, forgive me, I'm quite new to the process.
Yeah, no problem. Good question.
Well, I can tell you that experience doesn't really help. And to Peter's point, the process is so in flux. And again, even more so than in, the good old days when we just kind of like screamed. Now we shout and cry. So, all right. So the motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Devo,
Oh, did he say Mrs. Pavo? Yes.
the Dakotas,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we got through that as painlessly as our.
So just for point of clarification, if we're all
Yeah.
looking at this letter, so Peter, you're gonna just need to tweak that to say, the Tiverton School Committee is submitting an initial budget, per legal restriction of 33,531, 278. Now, if you want to continue the verbiage that says you're going to become arguing for more, go for it. But as long as it's clear that we voted
Yes.
on the legal restriction.
Yeah, it will absolutely say you voted tonight on that number.
All right. Back up my agenda. So next is the item 5H, approve ESSER 3 spending plan. Dr. Sanquioni?
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. So in your packet, we've given you and I want to emphasize this, a preliminary draft of ESSER 3 spending that the school department was awarded $1,718,978 under ESSER 3. We're required to submit a spending plan, a draft spending plan by January 30th of this year. I want to remind or let the committee know that this certainly can be amended multiple times between now and the actual time we have to spend it, but we have to submit documentation of the full amount and how we would anticipate it being used at this time. I think there's a lot of preliminary reviews of this revenue. You may have seen some things in the paper regarding ESSER 2 and other communities who may not have spent it appropriately or didn't go through the right channels and so I think the state right now is trying to get as much information as possible how communities are anticipating using this. So if you've looked at what we've submitted to you, you can see it's really personnel based. It's based upon the needs of the Tiverton Public Schools. It's reinstating some positions that were cut, and it's anticipating what we just talked about, that we need a $35 million budget to level staff again. Probably the achievement of that budget is going to take a Herculean effort, and to protect the Tiverton Public Schools, we put in those positions that we feel would be eliminated if we had less than 35 million. So I think it's a wise decision to codify it right now in ESSER 3. And then there's some other requirements that we had, as you can see in there. We've got the distance learning program for some students. We've got a small amount for some science curriculum and so forth to meet some of the other covenants of the grant itself. So it's 1.7 million. It could be spent over the next 3 years or as the committee sees fit, and that this certainly can be amended multiple times during the spending time, but we do need to submit a document to them by January 30th of this year.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor to discussion. Mr. Jacotis?
No, I'm here to listen. Thank you.
Mrs. Palish?
So we are recommending that we use 844602, just to make sure I'm clear, and that the roughly 870 will be carried past FY '23.
No, I'm saying that depending on the outcome of this year's budget would determine how actually all of it would be spent. If we were faced with the $33 million budget, we had to
Oh,
cut.
so I guess we're doing the FY '23 budget. And this totals 844,602. But the total funding is 1.7 million.
Right, the total fund is 1.7 million. We need to show the state how that 1.7 million would for at this time be utilized. Again, I'll keep emphasizing that it can be changed as you see fit, but again, we've got a January 30th requirement to show something.
So I guess that's it. So you're recommending that we use 844,602 in anticipation of a shortfall, and then what's the rest going to be used for?
That would be used for the online learning program for our students, some cleaning of, some COVID
But I
related.
guess that's why I'm trying to, so the 844,602 is for this, and you're going to spend the 869,926 in FY '23 too?
So much of this is contingent upon what our FY '23 budget will be.
But is that what this says? That we're going to spend all 1.7 million in FY '23?
No, it's just simply a spending plan right now.
Oh, okay.
So the way I understand this, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, is this is a spending plan of 844,602 to cover some of the gaps that ESSER 3 is supposed to accommodate. And
It's really budget gaps, okay?
yeah, well, yes, budget gaps, but they fit into the category specified by ESSER 3.
Gotcha.
The 869,926 is a carryover, and we determine how that is based on what the final FY '23 budget is.
Oh, I got you.
Still restricted within those categories of socioeconomic, or not socioeconomic, you know what I'm saying? Social and emotional, learning loss, digital divide.
Yep.
And
So you're not delineating right now where the 869,926 goes, just in case, because we don't know what's going to end up with the.
that's,
Okay,
yeah, that's how I read this.
I'm
I
with
don't know,
you.
Peter, am
So,
I correct?
You're absolutely right on target. It's just, again, it's a document for January, and
Yep.
the document can change, but I think it protects our interests as best as possible in case our budget doesn't come in where we're hoping it could be.
okay, so taking into consideration, what is it, a $1.2 million budget deficit based upon the book. I'm a little concerned. Do we need to get the curriculum right now?
We don't, but there's covenants in the spending plan that says some of it has to be used for these things. So we've minimized that as best we could.
I see Sue shaking her head.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure she's,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, Peter, say yes.
yes.
Okay,
that's it.
I'm just trying to look at all of this because like I said, when we're looking, we know we're going into a deficit. It's just how bad the deficit's going to be.
Right.
So I'm just trying to, I have absolutely no issue with any of the positions. RI Connections Academy, tell me what we use that for again?
That's the online program for our students. Distance learning, full-time school for certain students who couldn't come back because of COVID-related issues, immune compromise, kids who had various things that just had to have distance learning this year.
But this is for next year.
No, that's an FY '22 expense.
But this is the '23 budget.
No,
No,
this is an ESSER
isn't.
spending plan.
Right,
Okay.
So
So-
the number, the eight, what is it?
844,602 is to
Those
spend
are
now.
expenditures in FY '22.
Yes, that would have been easier if that would have been, because I was confused too, Elaine.
Okay,
926.
Thank you.
That can be spent, I guess, on any, within the constraints of ESSER 3 guidance, but can be spent, in some other way in FY '23. That's the
So
thing.
we already have RI Connections Academy, so we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Is that something you're looking forward to continue going forward potentially? I guess it's kind of going to depend on how what happens in
Right.
February, March.
Exactly, and what the needs of our students are come next
Yeah.
August when we start making these decisions.
Yep. Okay.
We don't want to return to DL with our staff. We know that, and
Yeah.
this is the most viable option for kids who need it.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
all set,
since-
Dr. Larkin, finally.
Since it's always so obvious what's going to be the lay of the land in 3 months, we should have no problem there, right? So Mrs. Pavo, I think you're up next.
yeah, I was looking at the curriculum also, but I was also looking at the Rhode Island Connections Academy because it's such a chunk of change, and I didn't think that we had that many students who were using DL, like that many students who couldn't return to school, and I feel like that's a huge amount of money, a lot of money.
Isn't it like $10,000?
But that's this year, 100,000 is a lot of money.
It is.
in my head.
The tuition's
So
about,
I don't know how many students we're servicing, and you probably don't know exactly either.
no, we do.
But I was thinking this was 23 going forward, but it's actually 22, so we have to kind of pay the bill.
Mhm.
But that's
Isn't it-
the only question. Everything else was fine.
Peter, isn't it something like $15,000 or $19,000 per student?
It's no, it's 11,000, excuse me,
11,000. Okay.
11,000 per student. Okay.
per student.
Okay, that was the only thing.
All right. Mrs. Farnworth?
So Peter, on these positions that you've laid out here, if you're saying there for fiscal '22, are they already people that are on board that we're paying? And
That
that
is-
will
that-
free
so-
up some budget?
Yeah, great catch. So you may recall from the budget presentation that we brought positions back under ESSER 2.
Mhm.
And so the positions that were in ESSER 2, one-time funding, right? That's gone. If we
Yeah.
want to maintain them and we can't do it through our budget, I'm going to recommend to you that they come out of ESSER 3.
So these will be FY '23 expenditures.
Right. And all the positions would be FY '23.
Yeah.
Okay, and just,
Okay, so it wasn't just me that was confused. This is confusing.
yeah, I mean, I thought the whole thing was '23, but
That's
apparently,
what I was thinking too.
I guess the point is we're making the allocation in FY '22.
and we're
Right.
not here approving any purchases tonight or hires. We're simply approving the submission of the ESSER 3 grant, right?
Right.
That is correct. However, everything that has an FY '22 next to it, we're going to execute. So as I look at the list here, and we tried to codify it at FY '22 or FY '23. There's one position on there that is FY '22, and it's
Because I don't see FY '22
I don't-
on my list.
I don't see anything either.
well, if you're looking at the list,
Yeah.
like line item, if you there's numbers on the far left, so it starts with number 8. That's just the line item that comes down. It's Rhode Island Connections Academy. That's FY '22. The scrubber is FY '22. The science curriculum's FY '22. The AR/VR is FY '22, and then there's one position FY '22 at the third math specialist at the elementary school that we wanted to start this January. Then everything else below that is FY '23, which gives you the flexibility then to decide if we want those positions or not. But we wanted to at least show the state and put that money aside because we believe these are the positions that would be cut if our budget is not fully funded.
And to Diane's point, this is just a submission approval, and we could still decide not to bring back some of those positions in FY '23. It's just to get it,
Absolutely. I
get
think
something
that
in
whole,
front of them. Okay.
I believe that whole discussion happens in, sometime in late April, May, when we know what our FY '23 budget is.
Okay.
I also want to make it clear, it's not, it is not permission to purchase anything.
I would say to you,
With a
that
separate discussion.
Well, the FY '22 stuff has to be.
right, the FY '22 is, we're asking you
Oh.
to execute this spending plan, and the stuff that's FY '22 is for now.
I'm struggling with yet another curriculum package that we're not seeing in advance. This is going to be the third time. And these are not insignificant dollars. I'd like an opportunity for the school committee to review the curriculum.
Okay, we certainly do that. I mean, I would say to you, I gave you this list 3 weeks ago and specifically said in 2 emails, if there's anything you need, let me know. And we certainly would have had that all prepared for you tonight. So we certainly
Well,
don't.
I assume this was all FY '23, Peter. I really did.
I did too. It was confusing.
Okay. Yeah, if that's what you need, we can certainly produce that documentation for our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Dan?
What about the safety upgrades for the phones, et cetera? Just around 75K number. Is that also a 22?
Yes, that's part of the capital allocation.
Right, that's not on this list.
No,
It is here.
Says
Safety
Safety-
upgrades phones, 75K.
Are you looking at the capital
I'm
request?
looking at the ESSER 3 list.
no. Is this, do we all have the same list?
Right, ESSER 3 funds list.
The one that
That's
was
what
on your,
mine said. That's what mine says.
Mine
The
says
ESSER
ESSER 3 funds lists in blue
Oh,
has
So
1.7
item,
million.
yeah, so number 15 is safety upgrades, phones, et cetera.
75K.
So one slide before that, there's replace paging system TMS. So
again, that's a capital request. That's not.
Right.
That's separate. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Peter or Amy, you want to speak to number 15?
so number 15 is, so to answer Mrs. Farnworth's question, the phone system was allocated as part of the capital allocation from the town council. And that is an FY '22 expense.
So if it was allocated by the council, why is it on this list?
I can't answer that. I don't have what you have in front of me.
When do you need approval for this list? Perhaps we could redo the list and have it on our next agenda item, so we know what's FY '22, we know what's FY '23. Give Ms. Roderick a chance to see what's in front of us.
So I have to enter all of this in line item UCOA detail into ESSER grants, which is RIDE's grant portal,
Yeah.
by January 31st, because they need to award the money by March 24th of '22. So I
Okay.
actually have to break all this down into the respective UCOA line items.
Gotcha.
So our next meeting would be scheduled for January 25th right now.
Yep.
Right. So we can bring it back to you then. And we'll bring the documentation for the curriculum items.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Could you please, for regarding the curriculum, just the process, because I have a feeling that your administrators also
That our administrators,
weighed in on it.
yeah, that's. the
Yeah,
only way
so
it-
if you could just give a brief synopsis of the review process with your administrators with that, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have I gone through everyone in the committee to ask questions about this? Or have I not called on anybody in the committee other than Sam? So, So right now we have a motion on the floor to approve this. Before we take up whether or not we're gonna withdraw or modify that, I'm gonna ask for any questions from or comments from our administrators.
Yeah, Dr. Lockett, I'm gonna ask you to withdraw that motion and let us come back to you on the 25th.
Okay,
That was my motion. I will withdraw the motion to approve the ESSER 3 spending plan.
okay. All right, we're still on the agenda item. Any questions or comments from our administrators? Any questions or comments, Sam?
No.
And anything from the public, Mr. Carnavale?
Dr. Locken, Denise has raised her hand.
Okay, Denise?
Unmute, please.
Denise,
Denise, you're muted.
Sorry. Amy just said a phone allocation was given via the casino money. Is that the Intercom THS?
Yeah, that's I think
There was
what,
no phone allocation given for
Yeah.
the casino money.
right, that is, your Denise is correct. So I
Yeah,
think,
the Intercom THS, and I just didn't know if that was I doubted that that was the same thing, but.
yeah,
It's not.
I think we need to get a little bit more detail about the list in general. And I guess my suggestion was maybe we could approve part of this if that helps, but if you guys, Peter and Amy, if you feel okay going to the 25th, that's, yeah, I'll defer to you guys, or we'll
Yeah,
defer to you.
the 25th will be a much better date to go through this with you because there's a lot more detail that we want to provide you.
Okay,
Should be great first time.
okay.
Dr. Larkin,
Yes, Mr. Farnworth.
and I apologize for this, but this discussion brought my attention to the FY23 capital request that we skipped over in our budget discussion.
We did.
Vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask for the committee's forbearance here. I think we need to discuss having a more detailed, dedicated meeting to the budget in general.
I concur.
And I think that's something that we could take up at that point as well.
So we're not obligated to put forth an initial capital request in January?
I don't think so, actually.
If I may, Dr. Locken, it's just the budget number that you're required.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no matter what we did, even if we, voted $60 million, which would certainly be in violation of the charter, all they would do is say, okay, you didn't meet the requirements, come back to us, or you still have to do it at the final number. Obviously, if we voted the final number past dates, then that'd be a whole other story.
Okay, like I said, I apologize. It just
Nope.
occurred to me as we were going through this other thing.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Ah.
All right. So I think.
So do we need a motion to continue?
No, we can
We'll
just.
just,
post
we'll
it
just,
again.
we'll just move it.
Yeah, it's, we had a discussion. We'll post it again next meeting. We'll discuss when we're gonna meet again. Maybe we'll do it, I'm thinking maybe sooner rather than later, but we can do that when we get to that part of the agenda. Let's see what the will of the people is. All right. So we are up to item 6A. Is it really only 8:30? Approved district safety plan.
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
And I don't know, this discussion should be an executive, actually.
I was just gonna ask you that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the vote. And if, this is another thing we can post for executive if the committee wants to discuss it in further detail. Mrs. Palish?
Well, you're probably right. Let's just continue this as well and post it in exec, and then we can vote and then report out.
Okay, so you want to withdraw your motion?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we'll continue this to executive. All right. I'm flipping around my agenda here. All right, so next is item 6B, settlement with the NEA, possible vote. Reported out in our meeting in December. We took legal advice and took a vote to approve a settlement with NEA. We are now going to take this vote in open session. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the settlement.
Motion to approve the settlement,
Second,
whatever.
Mrs. Pavos made the motion. Mr. Dakotas, you'd like to second?
I would love to second.
Okay. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Dr. Larkin, as a point of order, didn't we already take this vote in December in open session?
we took this vote.
In exec, and then we reported out, but Ben asked us to vote again.
Right.
in open.
No, I think he did it a second time, Deb, in the meeting. You weren't here.
Oh. Okay.
I think we were still advised to take it in open session
We
today.
put it on this agenda, yes, our
Okay.
next regular agenda.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So,
I'm still a yes.
yep, point of order made, Mrs. Farnworth. Do you care to vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes,
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
and I vote yes. And just by way of clarification for the public, if they're watching the minutes for that session. All right. Item 7, announcements, scheduled meetings, reports. Again, we have a meeting on the 25th that are going to be the school budget presentations. I'm going to throw it out there. I think we need to meet again in more detail to discuss the budget. How does the 18th work for people, if you agree?
hold on, please.
I cannot make the 18th. I already have something. Sorry, but
19th?
I can't do the 19th. Can't do the 20th.
You can't do that week, right? Pretty much.
I can't do the 18th, the 19th, or the 20th. I can do the 17th. I know that's a holiday.
That's the holiday. That's next Monday.
Yeah.
I can do the 17th. Although it is a holiday, that's not probably not fair to Peter and his staff. I think, is that a day off, Peter, for you guys?
It is, but if we're gonna do it virtual, I know I would participate with you folks. I think that's, again, makes the rest of the week easier.
Is it allowable by state law for us to meet on a holiday?
Yes.
Yeah, the council's meeting that night. Correct?
We just have to make sure we give the notice taking into consideration that's a holiday, right?
Yeah, we have to post it. We'll have to post it by
Wednesday.
tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean, I agree, Jerry. I think we need to go through the budget. We need to go through the budget book. I have some questions on some of the slides. I think we need to talk about what of this we want presented to the budget committee and the public. I think it really behooves us to go through this budget book in detail.
So we have, in some past years, actually had a Saturday morning meeting.
Yep.
How does that sit with people?
I thought, Mike, did you coach on Saturday mornings? Is that why that was hard?
It depends. I probably could do like 9 o'clock.
So like the 22nd?
Yeah, I could do in the morning, like 9.
It's a Friday.
Is it a Friday?
22nd to
22nd.
Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
22nd. I thought you said 21st. So.
Yeah, 22nd to Saturday. We could do 9 and then we could get started. And then if, if Mike had to go, he could certainly leave.
Yeah,
I have
I'm
an
good.
appointment at 11 on the 22nd. I'd have to be out by quarter of.
Yeah,
How about
that's
this?
my,
How about this Saturday?
No, I have an appointment this Saturday.
Okay.
So we got Monday, Martin Luther King, or Saturday, the 22nd, early.
Peter, do you have any?
Leonie, Mrs. Broderick, any thoughts?
No, pleasure of the
25th, we
committee.
have a school committee meeting.
I would say Monday's probably the best choice, the 17th.
I'm okay with Monday or Saturday, depending upon what the rest want to do.
Can people do as early as 6 on Monday, the 17th?
I can.
As long as it's not AM.
I could do 5 o'clock if you
I
want.
could do 6 a.m. Come on.
Actually, we could do Monday morning. It's, if people wanted to use the holiday time, but or even 5. Monday at 5.
Yep, I'm
All
totally
we're
fine
doing-
Monday afternoon.
All we're doing is the budget. Is that correct?
Yep.
As long as nobody else puts anything else
Don't
on,
put
yeah.
anything else on the agenda.
No, we're not gonna
because
put
I
anything
have
else.
questions. I'm sure everybody has some questions.
Anything else will wait until the next meeting, the 25th.
Yes.
All right.
So
So
On
please-
Monday,
on
I
the
prefer Monday
17th?
to Saturday, but I'm one person.
All right, so Monday, the 17th.
I'm
At
sorry,
what
at what
time?
time, please?
Hmm?
At what time,
time?
please?
At 5.
5.
It will be virtual, correct?
Yep.
And we already have our books, so.
Yep. That's okay with you, Peter
Yep, but it's perfect, Dr. Locken. Thank you.
and Amy?
Yes.
So everybody's in agreement, Monday at 5. And we will need to post this
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
at 5.
because Monday is a holiday,
Right,
so
right.
You
So,
need
all right.
full 48 hours,
not
Right.
counting the weekend.
right? So
So
Carolyn-
we're just gonna squeeze it in. It's gotta be done early. It
Yeah, so
should-
Carolyn, if you
Should
can just,
actually be done tonight.
Fine.
yeah, you have 40, if you do it 48 hours.
You got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
So tomorrow by 5 will be Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to
Yeah,
Friday.
that'll be 48. Yeah, okay.
all right. So Carolyn, if you could just post that tomorrow morning, and the only agenda item is FY23 budget.
Perfect.
All right. Then we have our meeting on the 25th, which is school budget presentations by the principals. Anything else in terms of meetings, scheduled meetings, reports, or announcements? Okay, I am going to ask for motion to enter executive session under Rhode Island General Law 4246(5)(a)(2), legal advice, litigation, collective bargaining, Council 94, under the same statute, legal advice, litigation, collective bargaining, NEA Tiverton, and under Rhode Island General Law 4246(5)(a)(1), job performance, character, physical or mental health, administration contracts. Can I have that motion? Is
So moved.
there a second?
A second.
And that's a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Codis,
Yes.
and Mrs. Pavo.
Yes.
Mike is getting very emphatic. All right,
Dr. Larkin, there was another item on there. Are you,
that's been pulled.
okay? Thank you.
So we are in executive. I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess. Feel free
Thank
to
you.